Welcome to the Everyday Conversion Podcast, the only 5-day-a-week podcast helping faithful members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have and foster daily gospel discussions with their families based on the Come Follow Me curriculum. I'm your host, Mark Sieverkrop, and it's important for me to tell you up front that the views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts of this podcast alone and do not represent the official doctrine and viewpoint of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With that in mind, let's jump right in with today's episode. So tomorrow is the beginning of the 189th Annual General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I hope you are as excited as I am to be able to listen to the counsel and testimonies of the prophets, apostles, and the other general leaders of the church. I especially love the fact that regardless of where I am, what I'm doing, or even if I am unavailable, or if I just want to listen again, that the technology is there to allow me to be able to study and restudy the messages that are given so that I can learn what Heavenly Father is saying to the prophets and apostles today. You know, that was one of the things when I joined the church that was really one of the most important things to me, was this idea that there was a prophet on the earth, that Heavenly Father loved me enough to send prophets and apostles in my day to speak to me and to counsel and guide me as much as he loved people in times past that had prophets. So I'm excited. I'm super excited. And I've always loved the description in Mosiah chapter 2 when the people came to listen to King Benjamin. And I feel like there's a lot we can learn about preparing for conference from these verses. So in Mosiah chapter 2, verses 5 and 6, it says, "It came to pass when they came up to the temple, they pitched their tents round about, every man according to his family, consisting of his wife and his sons, and his daughters and their sons and their daughters, from the eldest down to the youngest, every family being separate from another. And they pitched their tents round about the temple, every man having his tent with the door thereof towards the temple, that thereby they might remain in their tents and hear the words which King Benjamin should speak unto them." And there's three things that stick out to me every time I think of conference. I think of these two verses, and there's three reasons. The first is it says that they came up to the temple. They were intentional. It was an intentional effort to come and to listen to the prophet, to the king. And likewise, for conference, we need to be intentional. We need to seek it out. Yes, it'll come out in the Ensign. And the Ensign, if you still get the Ensign, which we do, because I love having paper copies of it around the house. It's fun to read with the kids and to look at the pictures and all that kind of stuff. But yes, those come to my house. And yes, I could read them afterwards. But in order to listen to the prophet, I have to be intentional about it. I have to plan my weekend. I have to, if I do have things I need to do, I need to plan so that I can listen either live on my phone, which I do often, or plan a time that I can go back and listen after conference so I can catch the things that I missed. You have to be intentional. The second is it says that they pitched their tents, every man according to his family. It was a family thing. It was a family event. You know, the gospel is family-centered. We get the most out of it when it's in the context of our families. So I encourage you this weekend to learn as a family. I know how that is. I've got young kids. I know that sometimes that means, having the TV loud enough so that no matter where they are in the house, they hear the words that are spoken. For us, a lot of times it's telling our kids, hey, you can color, you can play quietly, but you need to be in the living room so you can be there and listen. And our oldest is getting old enough that we usually ask that she listen to at least one session. Sit down on the couch, watch the session of conference, and learn from it. Make notes, do those types of things. However you do it as a family. You know, one of the things I love, I remember one time people scolding some boys who were being loud in the back of the church, or I think at the back of a meeting when Joseph Smith was speaking. And I remember reading that Joseph Smith basically said, "Let them alone. You never know, but they will hear something that they will never forget." And I've learned that with my kids. They're always listening more than I think they are. But having them there and letting them know that we feel like it's important is really valuable. And the third is that it says that they pitched their tents round about the temple, every man having his tent with the door thereof toward the temple. Every time I think of the door being faced towards the temple, I think of living righteously. I think of, I think it was President Monson who said to always have the temple in your sights, to be living in a way that you're facing the temple, that you are thinking about it and it's in the forefront of your mind. So likewise, in order to get the most out of conference, we need to be living righteously. We need to be doing those things that will help us to have the Spirit to learn from. So my encouragement to you today, this is something that we used to ask people to do when I was a missionary. And I've done it since, and every single time I do it, it works. Between now and conference tomorrow, make a list of questions that you have or things that are concerning you or bothering you or you're wondering about. This could be doctrine. This could be a challenge in your family. It could be, even career or other concerns that you have. Make a list of those questions and then kneel down and pray and share those questions with Heavenly Father. Let him know what your questions are and let him know that you will be listening to conference and looking for the answers. And then, I'm sure you can guess what's next, listen to conference and look for the answers. And every single time I've done this, I've got answers. Sometimes it's something that a speaker says. Sometimes it's just revelation and inspiration that I get in my own mind from the Spirit as I'm watching conference. But I can promise you, if you do that, you will get answers. You will get guidance and revelation for the things that you need at this time in your life. And my final encouragement to you is share your favorite talks and quotes with us on social media so that we can maybe talk about them next week. Because as you'll notice, as I'm sure you noticed, and come follow me, this week's lesson is actually 2 weeks. So I'm going to be spending some time listening to the conference and picking out things that I want to talk about in the coming week on this podcast. So if there's something that you want to talk about or you think was interesting or really struck you, share it with us. We're on Twitter. If you haven't followed us on Twitter, we are on Twitter. You can get the links in the show notes for this episode at everydayconversion.com/028. You can get the link to our Facebook page, to our Twitter account. Share those with us. Tag us in the thoughts that you have and help us to create the content for next week. Help me to create the content for next week. But most importantly, look for those answers that you want to have in your life at this time, and enjoy conference. And we will see you next week when we recap what happened during conference and the things that were taught. Thank you for listening to the Everyday Conversion Podcast. For transcripts and other bonus materials, as well as past episodes, be sure to visit everydayconversion.com. And if you haven't yet, be sure to leave us a rating and review on iTunes or your favorite podcast listening platform. This episode was a production of the Everyday Conversion Podcast, and while we are faithful members of the church, the views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts of this podcast alone and do not represent the official doctrine and viewpoint of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For official doctrine and viewpoints of the church, please visit lds.org or mormon.org.